Okay, so in this letter 29, the Alter Rebbe is working off of the quote from the book of Proverbs. It says, "A woman of valor is the crown of her husband," and we explain a couple of important vocabulary words. One that's easily misunderstood is the words rotzain and tainig or oinig. Now, if you look those words up in the dictionary, they just translate as passion or pleasure, but maybe this is just me. But in English, when I hear the word pleasure, I'm thinking about ice cream more than I am about the very depth of my being. So when we use the word tainug, again, translated as pleasure, it doesn't mean the indulgent forms of pleasure. It means that which absolutely drives my existence. So for the animal soul, it's life itself. And for the godly soul, it's the desire and the longing to be unified with the infinity of Hashem. So Rotzain is what I want, which is the expression of the Tainug. I have a Tainug, a desire. So a person says, my Rotzain is to eat. Why do you want to eat? Because I want to be alive. So it's not the eating. The eating is the method through which I get to the Tainug, and the Tainug at the human level is being alive, and the Tainug at the spiritual level is being in alignment with the infinity of Hashem. We also have played off the analogy of the woman is the crown of her husband, that this is the metaphor for the written Torah and the oral Torah, that the oral Torah develops what is found within the written Torah. So in the written Torah, it says, you shall write them on the doorposts of your gates. But it doesn't say what them is or how they should be written. And so it's the oral Torah that develops that to be the scroll with the two chapters of the Shema as we know it, and we simply refer to it as the mezuzah. So that's oral Torah developing what is contained but unexpressed in written Torah. And then we added another metaphor, which is the idea of hair. So hair has a seemingly disproportionate central place in Torah. We have the Nazir who never cuts his hair. We have the Metzora, the person afflicted with tzaras, this physical manifestation of a spiritual disease, who has to shave his hair. And the idea being that hair, while it grows, which demonstrates life, that it is linked to the life-giving force of the body, so it is alive. But when you cut the hair, of course, there's no discomfort in cutting the hair because the life force is so intensely muted that it does not respond to the pain. So hair represents a very shallow, very muted, maybe better expression. So if it's coming from the Nazir, the holy person, so then his hair is holy as well. If it's coming from the Metzora, the person who is in the spiritual low point, so then even his hair has to be gotten rid of because it is an expression that is being nurtured by this unhealthy entity, the person afflicted with tzaras. So the idea of the hair in our context is the, again, muted or greatly stymied expression of Hashem. Now, where does this manifest itself? So we quoted the Gemara about the study of halacha, the study of the laws, the rules. And the rules and laws are quite often not evidently sensitive to godliness. They're just the laws. You can eat this, you can't eat that. If the letter is written this way in the mezuzah, it's acceptable. If it's not written that way, it's unacceptable, which can often feel somewhat muted in its godliness. It doesn't jump off the page to announce its holiness and its godliness. Well, this is like the hair. It is illustrative of the godliness, but the godliness is, again, intensely muted so that you can barely sense the godliness that is present. And like the hair, it is an expression, and if it comes from holiness, then it too is holy, which helps us to address the question that we mentioned along the way, what is it that is so special about the study of law, Jewish law, more than any other area of Torah, more than the books of the prophets, more than even the books of the Chumash? What is it about the study of law that assures a person that they will be in Olam Haba, the world to come? It's a Mishnah, which you may recognize because it's incorporated at the end of the daily davening, that says whoever studies the law is assured of a place in the world to come. And we asked the question, why the law specifically? And we explained that the law, again, like the wife who develops the husband, the law expresses and tangibilizes the godliness. It doesn't always feel that way. It may feel very rigid and perfunctory and instructional, and it doesn't seem to have the jazz of deep spiritual alignment. And so our response is because it is in fact that intensely godly, but that godliness has to be muted lest it overwhelm us. And this is always that balancing act that we have. The classic illustration is at Mount Sinai, when God revealed himself and we were so taken aback that we said to Hashem, maybe you speak through Moshe and Moshe will speak with us. This is way too much for us. So when we have too much revelation of godliness, we are strapped to try to find the holiness and not be overwhelmed by it. So the metaphor of the hair is that it is subdued enough that the godliness can reach us without, again, overwhelming us and knocking us backwards. So this longing that we have to be connected with Hashem will in fact be sated, because again, oineg, rotzoin, this driving passion that is expressed in the action is in our study of halacha. And on the other side of the equation, the driving passion of Hashem, the oneg of Hashem, is expressed in his rotzoin, in what it is that he chooses to ask us to do. So when Hashem asks us to do a mitzvah, it is an expression of the tainug, the passion that Hashem has, and that is expressed in the specific action item that he calls upon for us. So again, we'll just start from a few lines we did already. Like it says in the Zohar, that we do not have the capacity. Yes, you had a question?
Sorry. One more time, just put them pages, because I can't find where we're kind of starting to read in one book or the other.
It said 206 if you have the new print of the lessons in Tanya. If you have a different print, I don't know that I can tell you what page it is, but hopefully you could find it there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
you. Like it says, because here is always the concern that if we will see the full-on intensity of the infinity of Hashem, that we will be like sort of sucked up into that fire, like a small flame and a big flame. Now, this is an analogy that the Alter Rebbe has borrowed before, and it's somewhat observable. So if you have a big flame, like a bonfire, and you have a small flame, if you bring the small flame close to the big flame, it starts to become absorbed into the big flame. Now, this is a separate discussion that's really sort of beyond the scope of this, about the understanding of why that works. There is a philosophy, which the Alter Rebbe borrows from, that there's sort of an innate desire within the flame itself. So again, we're not here to discuss Newtonian physics and about whether objects fall to the ground because of an external force of gravity, or that there's some sort of internal drive within the object to be on the ground, or there's some sort of internal drive for this small flame to become absorbed in the big flame. That is a separate philosophical discussion. The Alter Rebbe here is borrowing this as an analogy, that ultimately the desire of our neshama is to be subsumed within the physical, within the infinity of Hashem. In other words, to not even be of its own identity. And this is our message. I mean, it's very timely. This is the Kohen Gadol going into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur and not having his own identity. As it says, that no man should be there. So we say, well, no man should be there, but you're just telling him to go. Well, when he goes in, it's like he's not a person. He's not going in for himself. And it's a very profound level. We've talked about this before. We are blessed in the world of holiness that there are people, hopefully, that we've encountered, but certainly that we have encountered from history, before whom we are completely humbled. In contrast, or maybe it exists, I'm not saying it can't exist in the secular world, but it's not the selfie idea where, hey, I met this famous athlete or this famous actor or this famous politician, where that further enhances my identity. I got his autograph because now being in that person's presence validated me. Look who I get to hang out with. But rather to be so humble to be in that person's presence that I lose my identity. So again, it may exist in the secular world. Maybe there'll be some great scientist, some great military hero. I'm not saying it can't exist, but I just, in thinking about it, I can't think of any secular person outside of a righteous tzaddik before whom people would say that they are humbled to be in their presence. Yes.
Would the Rebbe fall into that category?
I would absolutely say so. I mean, I would absolutely say so. I'm not saying it can't exist in the secular world, but I don't know that it does. In fact, when the Tsar fell, who was not such a nice guy to the Jews, but still they sort of reminisced and they said, well, there's something lost because we don't have an illustration in this physical world of that level of royalty and that sense that you become humbled before something greater than yourself. And it's a very lofty level. And that's the level that the Kohen Gadol achieves on Yom Kippur. And that's why it says there is no man. And that's why if he was distracted from it at any level, he died. Because it wasn't about him being humbled. It was about him. And if it's about me, well, you don't belong here. But if it's about the circumstance, again, there could be a great doctor, a fireman. I'm not saying there aren't such people, but I can't think of somebody that people would say, yes, if I was in that person's presence, it would humble me. Not that it would make me proud. Hey, everybody, guess who I saw today? Some famous person or some person of great action. And this is the desire. Now, the challenge is that we don't act like the two eldest sons of Aaron and in fact, quote, leap into that fire and completely forfeit our identity, because Hashem wants us to turn that around and execute the halacha. So now we're starting to build this understanding of why it is specifically in what can sometimes feel like rote behavior, stand up, sit down, hold the lulav this way and not that way, that we could run into this issue where we're not aligning ourselves with the infinity of Hashem. So we continue, im loish bechinas orze atzmai, tishtalshel, betimshach mimenu eiz ha'ar muetes b'derech hashtalshlis, madrega acha madrega, betzimtzumim rabim, at sheyivra mimenu levush echad, nivra me'ein mahus orze, lahalbish hanefesh ruach hanashama, b'derech levush zeh, shumein orze, tuchel lehenes miziv orze, ulasigoi, leitisbatwa mitzuyusai. Okay, it's a lot of words. So here, let's back up and understand what it is that we are saying. So, and what it then is the preferred process. So, what should we do? Meaning, if we are concerned about seeing this overwhelming godliness and being completely surrendered to it and forfeit within it, so what are we supposed to do? So, what should we do? So the Alter Rebbe says, what is the strategy? That what has to be something from this light itself that is tishtal shel. Remember that word. It's the chain. It's the process. And this is the position that tainug, that which drives us, is expressed in our rutzain. So the person wants to live, the rutzain is to eat. Eating is not the goal because you don't need to eat. Well, if I don't eat, then I'm going to. So the drive is the desire to be alive. That's the drive of the physical self. The expression of that drive, the mechanism to sate that drive is the food. So again, Hashem has this passion, and then he expresses that through the Ratzon. So we're on this side of the equation, and we get the Ratzon, eat matzah. And it may feel like not such a dynamic spiritual experience. Well, when we understand that eating the matzah is how we align with the Oinig of Hashem, because matzah I can eat. Infinite, I don't know how to deal with. The concept of infinity, it may be very bedazzling, but it's not very useful. What am I supposed to do with that? But eat matzah, that I understand. I can comprehend it. I can bake it. I can eat it. I can digest it. I can, pardon the pun, sink my teeth into it. I can truly grasp it. And then through aligning with the Ratzon, I become aligned with the Tainug, with the Oinig. So here's how the Alter Rebbe explains it. That it has to come from this light itself, that is Tishtal Shel. It's muted and muted, chain-like and chain-like. The Timshach Mimenu, when it draws out from it, Eza Ha'ara Mu'eta, some little bit, through this Hishtalshus, level after level, intense Tzimtzum of Tzimtzum. It's like the teacher. I think it was actually Einstein who literally said it, but if you say it was Einstein, no one will disagree with you. But I think it's actually true that he said that to truly understand something, you have to be able to teach it to a child. You know, two geniuses sit and talk, so the teacher is a little bit relying on the student's capacity and database. But when you're speaking with a small child who has no database and doesn't have a sophisticated understanding and has the humility to say he doesn't know and not just pretend like he does because he's too embarrassed to admit that he doesn't know, then you truly will see whether or not you understand it. So the oinik comes all the way down to the rutzin. So when a person says, why would God care what I eat? Why would God care if I eat matzah? They're missing the point. This is the expression of the infinity of Hashem that matches with us. And yes, it is important that we actually do it. And that becomes unified and connected. So the Alter Rebbe continues, level after level, until Ashivim and Levush Echad, you create a certain garment. And again, the role of the garment is not just to conceal, but it's also to express. How do I know who the king is? He has to wear the kingly garments. If he's wearing the garments of the peasant, so unless I'm a very knowledgeable royal family follower, I don't know it's the king. I only know it's the king because of the surrounding entourage. And he creates a nivra, one creation that is a reflection of this, to then invest in the nefesh, that's my basic level existence, ruach is my character, and neshama, the intellect. Remember, as we have talked about, that when we use the word generically, the neshama, we're actually speaking about 5 levels, 3 which are contained within our human experience, our physical existence, our spiritual character, and our intellect, nefesh, ruach, neshama, and the other 2 are outside of our immediate human experience, what we hope to incorporate them. They are chaya, what we live for, and yechida, our absolute union with Hashem, the sense that we are one with Hashem. That is an actual spark of Hashem, but that is outside of our human experience. And in order to be bonded between the physical and the spiritual has to be attenuated to match the nefesh, ruach, and neshama. V'derech levush zeh shu me'ein or zeh tuchel lehenes miziv oiroi or zeh ulasiga. And when it has this touch, this aspect of this intense godliness, expressed in this garment, then he is able to, again, we use the word enjoy or have the benefit, but it's not the shallow sense. He's able to experience it. Otherwise, it's like lecturing me about infinity. I don't disagree, but it's so outside of my purview that I have no capacity to be connected with it. Again, the fear that we make God so infinite, we make him irrelevant. Because what am I supposed to do with infinite? And then I will not become yeah.
Can I, neither the nefesh nor the ruach or the neshama can endure the light. What about the other two higher souls?
Yes, they have that capacity because they're not bounded by the human capacity, the human container. But if just to be at that spiritual level of an alignment with the infinity of Hashem, just to be there is not to fulfill the purpose. Meaning, if only my Chai and Yechida, so then what's the point of my physical existence? To say that Hashem created this world so that we should just ignore it and just be at the level that is outside of this world misses the point of the purpose of creation. And again, here the example being like seeing the sun through a clouded glass, or we would say sunglasses. So we can see the world, we can see the sun through sunglasses. Why can't you see the sun? Because it's so bright, it will overwhelm you. Well, infinite, again, if Hashem was simply looking for admirers, he would be infinite. And we'd say, wow, Hashem, you are infinite. And that's what the angels say, holy, holy, holy. Our message is not just holy, 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 some abstract distance and detached, faraway place. Our level is that we want to have an immediacy of our connection with the infinity of Hashem. Commercial Kosov, like it says, "V'yovoy Moshe b'seich Hanan v'yal chulu shenislabish b'Hanan v'olav arad derech Hanan v'chulu k'mashkos b'zerich chalik beis daf reishud v'reish chavtes." Like it describes Moshe Rabbeinu, who, when he went up on the mountain to receive the Ten Commandments, he went into the cloud. Now, this is a very dramatic illustration. The message is that if we see the sun directly, it will be too much. We need the cloud so that we can appreciate the sun. Without the clouds, the sun knocks us back. It blinds us. And we need the sun, we need the cloud so that we can appreciate the sun. So Moshe Rabbeinu went into the clouds so that he could become aligned with the infinity of Hashem. Hine orze hagonas l'tzadikim lasud lava yanikra b'shem nuam Hashem v'tzichzuchais l'sanig al Hashem. Now, this light that is hidden away for the tzaddikim, and this is a reference to the first day of creation. On the first day of creation, Hashem said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And we asked the question, well, what's the purpose? The whole purpose of light is so that we can see things. Light doesn't seem to have an innate purpose. Light is necessary so that we can see the things we're looking for. Since there are no people and there are no things, what is the purpose of this light? And so we explain that the light is hidden away for the tzaddikim. Okay, but it really doesn't answer the question. Why does Hashem create something? The first creation, once you have heaven and earth, time, and so on, why does Hashem create something that is not necessary at the time? That's only going to be necessary for tzaddikim at some future time. Why is that the first thing Hashem creates? And so we explain that it's like this, declaring the mission statement. The purpose of creation is light. Our mission is to spread light. What happens, though? We don't always get to appreciate the light. We don't always have the capacity to see the light, because if the light is so bright, we can't see it. But we should know that it is there. And our aspiration is to get to see that light, is to get to the point where we can see that level of godliness. What is the pathway to get us there? As you hopefully can anticipate, that's what halacha is. That's what the fulfillment of the mitzvah is, even though it doesn't always feel that way. And it may feel just like a rigid follow the numbers, and it doesn't give me that same sense of light and that immediacy as I may have hoped it would. And that's what it means, that it is hidden away for them. And the 400 worlds where the tzaddikim will enjoy. Now, the 400 worlds, what is this 400 worlds? Well, this is a reference to the idea that when Abraham Avinu purchased the cave of Machpelah, you recall in Parshas Chayei Sarah that Sarah Imenu dies, and Avram realizes he doesn't even have a place to bury her. So he identifies the place he wants to bury her in Hebron, the cave of Machpelah, where Adam and Chava are buried. And he goes and he buys it from Ephron. And Ephron cheats him and so on, whatever, but he buys it for 400 coins. What is this idea of buying it for 400 coins? So for whatever reason, which the Alter Rebbe does not nuance out, it's a little bit beyond the scope here, the idea of 400 is that it brings it into this physical world. By Abram paying 400 coins and acquiring this holy place that was in the hands of Ephron. This was the burial place of Adam and Chava, so it was clearly already a holy place, and it had fallen into the hands of a bad guy named Ephron, and Avram Avinu pays 400 coins, which, again, it doesn't go into why it's 400 and what the significance of that number particularly is. But the parallel is that when Avram pays 400 coins, he now takes it out of a level where its holiness is not appreciated, and it brings it into the level where now its holiness is appreciated. It brings it into this world, into the domain of the tzaddik. It brings it into the domain of Am Yisrael. Well, this becomes the method through which Avraham Avinu is able to anchor or make tangible that level of godliness. Well, this is, again, the 400, and again, doesn't go into why. So this has all of these levels that, again, are all an expression of the intensity of Hashem's passion, which, again, is expressed through the tangible and so on. ונקרס בשם מדרגה החיצוני ואחריים דרך משהו כמו שכתוב בזוהר, תר"ש חס עמוד בייס, עין בסימן מem kuf mem resh yud amud beis. And this idea that it is able to come down into a garment, that is into something that we can, as we would say, deal with, or we can handle, as opposed to it being this overwhelming level of godliness. So again, this is just like I have this drive, which, let's use the example that we can identify, which is to be alive. And then that drive says, I need food. So the food is the comprehensible. The drive is the inexplicable that needs to be manifest into something that is meaningful and tangible. כמי משכו שכל חודש כהי גבנה, ובחינס חיצוניוס ואחריים של כוח ובחינס התענג שבו, היא בחינס כוח הרצון שבו, שהוא רוצה מה שהוא רוצה, והנדובר שנוצר שעצר הפך תענג. So here, the Alter Rebbe spells it out. A person has tainik. Now again, that English word pleasure is just so commonly associated with something shallow or indulgent. That's not the message that we're going for here. In this context, we're talking about that which drives the very essence of my existence. It's not just some fleeting indulgence or extraneous, unnecessary accoutrement of almost a wasteful or silly character. But it's that which is my absolute driving passion. So we are fortunate that we know what our absolute driving passion is, which is to be in alignment with Hashem. Otherwise, we wind up thinking it's just shallow things, fancy things, or fame, fortune, power, etc., etc. So when a person has a passion for something, then his ratzain is to alleviate or to match or to satisfy that passion. That's what his Rutzain is. That's what his driving force is. So the driving force of the Rutzain is the expression of the Tainug. The Rutzain requires some motivation. The Tainug is innate. Now, a person might get his Rutzain out of whack with his Tainug. It's like the child is all upset. We say, "What do you want?" And he just says, "I want ice cream." He doesn't want ice cream. What does he want? He wants security. He wants safety. He wants his mother to hold him, whatever it may be. But he's not so aligned with his Tainug. So we say silly things when you say to people, "What do you want more than anything else in the world?" Well, how should I know? I'm 14 or 17 or 75. I don't always know. Well, we're blessed to know. But we think, what do I want? I want fame, fortune, I want security, and so on. And so we live in a world where people are constantly chasing these false idols because they think that they're going to satisfy their driving Rutzain. That's what I want, all of the needs and so on, etc. But when a Hashem expresses his Rutzain, so of course Hashem is not frivolous, and Hashem is not understanding himself, or whatever silly analogy we could use. Hashem creates the world because he has a passion. Hashem gives us the instructions. That's his Rutzain, which will align with and fulfill and satisfy his Tainug, his passion. And when we align with it, we become aligned with it. Now, the Alter Rebbe here focuses on the connection between Seichel and Tainug, which may seem bizarre, because we have a rule of thumb, the expression that we can't question why we want what we want. But what then is the role of Seichel when it comes? But we've now described, as the Alter Rebbe has said, that even in the realm of Seichel, of the academic, when a person hits upon a new idea, it also satisfies his Tainug, that a person also is yearning for an intellectual alignment with the essence of his soul. So when he understands something, when he gets it, when he chaps, he grasps it, which is what the word means, he gets that same alignment. It's almost a relief more than it is a pleasure. So when a person is thirsting, they drink water, they have relief, they're at peace. When a person's intellect is racing and they acquire this new understanding, again, they're at peace because they are in alignment with what they are driven for. So here the Alter Rebbe says that when a person has this level of understanding, I'm sorry. So because he wants it, as opposed to something that's not in alignment with his Tainug, and that is what causes him discomfort, pain. Now, again, as we know just from our own life experience, a person can do something because he thinks that it will bring him some satisfaction, but it brings him pain. But he thinks, well, the pain is somehow necessary for the satisfaction. I mean, the simplest level is the kid who wants to be accepted by all the other kids. So he'll do something that he knows is not in his own best interest. He knows it's not good for him, but he's driven by this odd sense of desire for acceptance. And so he will allow himself to be subjected to discomfort in the pursuit of what he thinks is going to be in alignment, which is outside of that. Okay. So too by Hashem. The infinite light of Hashem, which again, infinite is very exciting, but I don't know what to do with it. Gam ken kaviyachol haratzon elyon baruch hu, he bebechinas chitzonis v'acharayin bebechinas einik elyon. The Ratzain of Hashem, note the words here, the Ratzain is the expressive aspect, the tangible illustration of the Tainug. The Ratzain is the tangible illustration of the Ratzain, of the And this passion, this longing, this thirst, this hunger, all of these good illustrations of how intense it is. Hagam shehem yuchodim betachlis hayichud shu yisparach v'ratzoni echad v'loy karatzon ha'adam chas v'shalom lo minei v'lo miksasei v'in dimyu b'neihem klal. Now this is a term that we have come across so often in Tanya, where the Alter Rebbe says that Hashem is just like a person, but he's not like that at all. We play this sort of back and forth constantly. It's exactly that way, but it's not that way at all. It's exactly that way, but it's not that way at all. We constantly are doing this sort of like vacillation of understanding of what we're talking about. So we say here that Hashem's alignment and Ratzain as a mechanism to pursue his alignment is like a human being's Ratzain is the pursuit of alignment. But then we say, but it's not like that at all. It is like that, but it's not at all like that. Alpha PK, nevertheless, Dibra Torah, Koloshim and Adam. Torah speaks in human terminology. So we're allowed to do this because Torah speaks that way as well. Where Torah uses terms like God thought, God's hand, God's eye. So the Tanya really relies strongly on this process where we use human terminology to explain godliness, but we say it's not that way. But it is that way, but it's not that way. And we go back and forth and back and forth. Just like an analogy of a person. So here the Alter Rebbe is trying to align or trying to illustrate for us the alignment from top to bottom. So we have the idea of Keser. Keser is the crown. A crown sits on top of your head. Then you have the head, which contains your intellect. Then you have the heart, which contains your character. And the hands, which are active. Now, commonly, these are seen as or perceived as being separate ideas. There's some great aspiration. There's what I think. There's what I want. And there's what I do. And they are often in conflict with each other. A person's head is in conflict with his heart. I know I shouldn't eat that. It's bad for me, but I want it. My hands, they know that they should be more dexterous. They should be more rhythmic, but they're not. And there's this great objective that I may pay lip service to, but I'm often not in alignment with. Our goal, and again, Einig, we talked about this before, is being in alignment. And we very much have this idea, we talked about it a lot in the tshuva idea, how if we can visualize tshuva as a vertical idea, and that final hay being the part of godliness that is entrusted to us, and if we take it away, then we are breaking this sort of symmetry of being in alignment. And if, God forbid, a person's back is out of alignment, even the smallest bit, everything about them is disturbed. And if they're in alignment, this sort of perfect posture, everything else seems to flow from their intellect to their mode and mood, from their digestion and so on. So without overemphasizing that analogy, this is where the Alter Rebbe is headed, that we want the crown, which is what we aspire to motivate our intellect, to grasp that, and not just to override our intellect, but to be in alignment with it. And that should harness our character and express itself in our hands. So when the person is in perfect alignment, their behavior, which may again seem not as dynamically spiritual, when they're going through the mitzvah actions, is an illustration of the character, which is molded by the intellect, which is humbled, surrendered, batal, to the crown. So again, from top down, the highest level connected with the lowest level. And this is a common metaphor that Chassidus emphasizes all the time, that the game is played here in this world, that the mitzvahs are not simply something to keep us busy or to give us some sense of purpose and meaning and structure until we'll one day get to the real alignment with Hashem. This is the alignment with Hashem. This is what it means to be in perfect synchronicity with godliness, more than in the heavens, more than Kadosh, Kadosh, more than all these other spiritual entities that are clamoring for our attention. So here we go. Nevertheless, even though we can never compare God to the human alignment, even the spiritual alignment, but Torah does give us permission to do that. Torah does speak in human terms in order that we should be able to understand things, because we're imperfect human beings and we need to have some entryway for understanding. Through mashal, analogy, melitza, which are like insightful metaphors, from the human neshama, haklula, which contains mikayach hatainug, it has that power of tainug, this driving force, v'haratzain, and ratzain, which is the expression of it. So again, when a person says, I have to eat, you don't have to eat. You have to live. Again, that's the drive of the animal soul. The godly soul may even override that. And that's why we have fast days. But when the person says, it's not the eating. It's not the journey. It's the execution of the mission. That's what is the tainug. The ratzain is the way in which we align with the tainug. So we have tainug. We have ratzain. We then have chachma, which is our capacity to engage our intellect to become aligned with that keser, not just to override it, not just to put it aside, but to engage our capacity to get outside of ourselves. Remember, chachma, imagination, the willingness to get outside of my self-centeredness and be surrendered to that level. Again, like the Kohen Gadol who enters the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. Is there a circumstance where we can be in such alignment that we are completely bottled to it? We would think of it in the holy matters, but maybe a person, I don't know, goes to the Grand Canyon, hears beautiful music, sees some great act, and instead of saying, hey, guess what I saw? They just become completely bottled to it. They are surrendered to it. They are humbled to it, rather than, our society where we just want to take a selfie and we want to validate ourselves because look what I got to see. I met that person. I saw that great work of art. But to be completely humble to it. Like we see, when a person grasps some new idea, some fantastic concept that he's blown away by. Now, in our society, what sometimes happens is we don't like that. Learning is very difficult. It's hard. It means I have to abandon what I already know. And I don't like that. It's very uncomfortable. So we have a tendency to say, oh, okay, what you're really saying is, that is, we take this new idea and instead of being awed by it, we either dismiss it as irrelevant or we try to repackage it into something that we're comfortable with, because learning is very disruptive to my routine. I mean, we experienced it when computers started to become. There was a certain point we said, well, I don't need that, or I don't understand that, or it's not for me, or what do I need that for? I just have my own little pen and paper, and it's better. And then we did, but we didn't. And then we're still, this is too much for me, and so on. Because again, that learning can be very difficult. When we fully invest ourselves to it, we have a bittul, we learn something so completely new that we allow ourselves to become uplifted and transformed, to truly be moved by it, which is a hard thing, to allow ourselves to be completely uplifted by it. And not just that I learned some new data, that there's a new moon that circles some planet, which is just information, but I'm talking about a transformative conceptual idea. So then, so now look what happens. We have tainug and we have seichel. Whereas we thought that the concept of tainug was sort of offset from seichel, that seichel is only about the deep analysis of the functional It's sort of a mathematical idea, and Tainig is this amorphous driving force that's not containable within algorithms. Here, the Alter Rebbe is showing how we can link them because we want, our aspiration is this perfect sense of alignment. Even though it's true that Tainig is a far more ethereal, less tangible idea than intellect, but true intellect begins with imagination. It's in the realm of seichel, but it's not the rigidity of numbers. And when I allow my chachma to have that expanse, when I allow myself to think those broadest of thoughts, I can have tainig in seichel, even though we tend to think of seichel as a bunch of very rigid, sequential, orderly processes, and tainig as something far more dynamic. But this is that alignment that we get to have here. It becomes embedded in the seichel. So don't think that tainig is detached from seichel. It drives seichel, which drives the heart, which drives the behavior. That's what it means to be in alignment. That the keser, the tainig, drives the intellect, shapes the heart, manifests in the behavior. When a person really now understands it and he grasps it, and it is now driving him. We learn Chassidus. We know again that the distinctive characteristic of Tanya and of the Alter Rebbe, and of course the whole philosophy of Chabad, is that our Chassidus has a system to it, just like the legalities of Torah have a system to them. It's not simply an amorphous sense of an idea. It is a systematic process with parameters and so on. And that, on the one hand, feels very straitjackety. But on the other hand, it allows us to have our intellect be in alignment. So again, every community is searching, how do we make our godliness meaningful to us? How do we make our alignment with Hashem personal and meaningful? And some say, booey on all that intellect, it's so rigid and dry, that's good for figuring out how to write a mezuzah or how to bake matzah. But when it comes to my relationship with Hashem, I have to be infinite and expansive and celebrate. And again, we're not against that, but the problem there is it runs out. The long, short way is that the intellect engages in this pursuit of alignment with Hashem. It doesn't have to be negated or overridden to achieve that alignment with the infinity of Hashem. When a person understands this and grasps it, he aligns himself with that tainig that is invested in the chacham. That's why bina is called olam haba. Or as we might even say colloquially, what is heaven? Heaven is when you finally understand it. And if anybody has had the experience, which is probably everybody, of being frustrated in an elusive attempt to capture some concept, and then you get it, that's called an olam haba. Not just because now I can solve all my math problems. It's because now I'm in alignment of that which I was pursuing. So again, chachma is the entryway into tainug, and when I master it, I have been an understanding, and I have this experience of being in alignment. And that's why it's called Olam Haba. Because what is Olam Haba? When we start to be able to see and understand and comprehend, better than seek, understand and comprehend that which drives Hashem. And that why this mitzvah has to be done in this particular way and why it's meaningful to Hashem, that I do it in this specific manner. Which reveals the chachma with the tainig, meaning not just the joy of understanding, but why is this immediately important to the infinity of Hashem? I start to comprehend it, not because I'm making my understanding the arbiter of whether or not I'll do it. I mean, that's what we got to be careful about. And this helps us understand. I mean, perhaps the most well-known illustration of this is the Yidden at Mount Sinai. And God said, will you accept the Torah? And the other nations said, we want to know what's in it. And Hashem told them something that they didn't want, and they rejected it. Now, what does that mean? That Hashem tricked them? They said, no, we want the Chachma to be the predication of the Tainug. And the Yidden said, Nasa, the Tainug will lead us to the Chachma. And they said, well, how can Tainug lead to Chachma? Tainug and Chachma are two separate silos. They don't mix. Tainug is Tainug and Chachma is Chachma. I like chocolate, and intellect is not going to be grasping chocolate. They couldn't imagine how Tainug could lead to Chachma. So they said, we'll have the Chachma, not the Tainug. They're thinking that that's what mitzvahs are. Mitzvahs are the best way to run the world. We agree with that. But that neuters the Tainug within it. So when the world says, yes, we should follow Torah, it's the best idea for business, it's the best idea for community, best idea for family, it'll give you meaning and purpose. Yes, we agree with it. But that's not why we do mitzvahs. Because we do mitzvahs because they align with the Tainug of Hashem. In other words, does God serve me, that God has given me the best suggestions? Or do I serve Hashem, that Hashem has a Tainug and a Ratzon, and he asks us to partner with him to fulfill the purpose for which he created the world? The Tainug is why Hashem created the world. The Chachma gives us the ability to be fully invested. So we could say, well, I don't care, whatever Hashem says. I mean, why do we even need the Nishma? Just say Nasa, we'll do it. Well, whatever Hashem, I don't care. What do I need to understand? Stand up, sit down, lean to the left, don't lean to the left. Well, I don't care. Whatever you want. Because then, whatever I want, then God does not reside in my Chachma, my character. He only resides in my behavior, and it's not true. It's not true in the sense of everlasting. Then Tainug has been separated out, and Hashem wants to dwell within every aspect of ourselves, our intellect, our character, and our behavior. And this is what the tzaddik can grasp. Not just because he's really good at the mitzvahs, but because he has humbled himself to allow his chachma to pursue the Tainug. And this is why Chassidus goes on and explains what is the concept behind this mitzvah and the concept behind that mitzvah. And we're sometimes frustrated. I'm just struggling to do the mitzvah. And you're giving me all of this depth and representation because we're trying to work backwards and try to understand what the Tainug is. We do it with one another. Now, sometimes we do it, well, why should I? Meaning, if you don't convince me that it's a valid Tainug, then I won't. That's a negative. But when I say, I want to understand you, help me to understand why this is so meaningful to you, then I can be in alignment with you. Otherwise, I'm just performing a function. But can I be in alignment with you by understanding you and understanding your passion, and then I can understand, or the mechanism is Ratzon, is the entry point, is the point of entry to your Tainug. That it reaches down into this level where I become aligned with the infinity of Hashem, where I become connected with this level, that I can be in this level of alignment, that Torah that comes from Hashem's wisdom becomes aligned with me.